After a Russian jet fighter collided with an American drone over the Black Sea. Now, the US military's European command says that the Russian fighter plane struck the propeller of the unmanned US aircraft, causing it to crash. President Biden has been briefed about the incident, and this appears to be the worst publicly acknowledged US-Russian confrontation since the invasion of Ukraine more than a year ago. The Pentagon says US Defense Department officials have not spoken with Russian officials so far about the incident. And we've just heard from Pentagon Press Secretary Air Force Brigadier General Pat Ryder in just the last few minutes.
At approximately 7:03 a.m. Central European Time, one of the Russian Su-27 aircraft struck the propeller of the MQ-9, causing U.S. forces to have to bring the MQ-9 down in international waters. Several times before the collision, the Su-27s dumped fuel on and flew in front of the MQ-9 in a reckless and unprofessional manner. This incident demonstrates a lack of competence in addition to being unsafe and unprofessional.
So that was the Pentagon Press Secretary, Air Force Brigadier General Pat Ryder. He was speaking within the past few minutes. And for all of our viewers who are joining us now in the UK, we'll bring you some of the details of what was said. Let's cross over to Washington. The BBC's Gary O'Donoghue joins us live now. Gary, for our international viewers, we were watching that press conference, that briefing. For our UK viewers, let's just bring them up to date with what we know about this incident, which the US are describing as reckless.
So what we know so far that is at about 6 o'clock this morning UK time, that two Russian fighters came into contact with an American unmanned surveillance aircraft over what the Americans say was international waters in the Black Sea. Now, these drones, as they're sometimes called, conduct effectively spying missions, but Americans insist it was over international water. Now, what seems to have happened is that one of these Russian planes collided or struck the drone, damaging its propeller, and the Americans had to then bring their aircraft down into the sea. Now, we've been learning some fascinating detail in the last few minutes. It seems that this encounter between these two Su-27, these pretty old Russian planes, and this drone went on for about 30 or 40 minutes. And the Americans said that they flew in front of the drone, that they apparently dumped fuel on top of it as well, presumably to try and sort of disorient the drone, etc., before this collision took place and the drone had to be brought down. Now, as far as we know, or the Pentagon is saying at the moment, there's been no contact with Russians military on this. We do know that the State Department here in Washington have summoned the ambassador Anatoly Antonov to an audience. That's a pretty stiff diplomatic measure. It might not sound like much, but that's what happens when countries have serious diplomatic problems with one another. And we're learning more details. We're also promised by the Pentagon perhaps some imagery of what happened in this collision over the Black Sea. They said they're going through the process of declassification, so we may get some stills, we may get some video of what actually happened later on.
OK, Gary, thank you so much for bringing us up to date. Really appreciate that. Gary O'Donoghue, my colleague there in Washington, just on giving us an